Hello and welcome to Bloomberg Quint. My guest today is Mr. Vikram Limaye, Managing Director and CEO of NSE. Mr. Limaye, thank you very much for joining us on Bloomberg Quint. We saw last evening the entire SEBI order coming in the co-location case, the dark fiber and the corporate governance case, 3 orders which came in NSE. What is your first assessment of those orders?
So, the good news is that we have an order, because this matter has been pending for some time, and it's important to have at least an understanding of what the boundaries of the investigation, the results of the investigation are. So from that perspective, I think I'm happy that there is a finality and conclusion to this matter. We're obviously examining all the orders because it's come in only last evening and there are lots of pages to review, and the lawyers have been working on it since last night. We're awaiting comprehensive legal advice on the matter, and we will then decide future course of action after discussing at the board on what the various options available are.
Very surprised by the quantum of disgorgement given by SEBI in this order, because nowhere in the order it says that you have done unfair trade practice, which was the biggest concern for the exchange as a whole. There's some places which is talking about you were not fair or transparent, or there was inadequate due diligence which has been done, but getting a disgorgement of nearly 1100 crores, very surprised by the quantum.
It is a stiff number, I must admit, and certainly much higher than what one would have anticipated, particularly in light of what you described, that SEBI's orders says that we are not really guilty of any unfair trade practice or fraudulent trade practice in the colo situation. So from that perspective, actually it's a good outcome for NSE that we have not been charged of any fraudulent or unfair trade practices. And in that context, I wish to reiterate for your viewers and the investors that the faith and trust in NSE is actually rock solid, and the faith and trust in Indian markets is rock solid, as it should be, because we are a well-governed, well-regulated market, and NSE has always stood up for high standards of governance, and we have done quite a bit even in the last couple of years to improve governance standards for the external environment and at NSE, and also to strengthen controls processes, etc., including some of the issues that might have come up as a result of the co-location matter. So from that perspective, it is a good outcome for NSE that we have been exonerated from any fraudulent or unfair trade practices. And so the quantum of penalty with interest, etc., is a fairly stiff number for sure.
Will you be challenging the quantum of penalty?
I can't comment on that. As I said, the lawyers have to come up with comprehensive advice on all aspects of the order, colo and other orders. And there are always pros and cons to any kind of strategy that you pick. And so we will have to evaluate all the options that are available, the pros and cons, and do what is right from an institutional perspective, from a long-term standpoint.
From a 2017 first show cause notice to the second one which happened in 2018, it got split into various segments. 3 of them coming in which you were involved, and then some employees separately, OPG was separate. The whole issue was about illegal gains through this co-location which has been done. Nowhere in the order it mentions anything about illegal gain or how NSE helped get illegal gains for others. It just says there's not enough evidence to the fact there. And given that as a backdrop, the disgorgement amount or the principle used for the disgorgement amount, are you satisfied with? Is there a question on the kind of principle that has been used to say that okay, now you have to pay this much amount? It's just a slap on your wrist, but you said you have to pay a hefty fine.
Yeah, so I don't want to get into the details and comment on whether the principles used by SEBI in its order are appropriate or not appropriate, etc. I think it would not be appropriate for me to comment on that matter at this point in time. As I said, our lawyers are evaluating the orders and the options available to NSE. And once we get comprehensive advice, we will decide on our future course of action.
Will the board be deciding on that part?
Yes, of course.
You have a board meeting coming in the next 2 days.
So whether it will be decided at this board meeting, there will certainly be a conversation at this board meeting because the orders have just come last night. Whether there will be a finality in terms of the decision that we will take on future course of action, I'm not sure, because this is a complex matter and it might require more than one conversation with the board to ultimately decide on the course of action. I mean, we've been given 45 days to deposit the amount with SEBI, so we don't have to take a decision in 2 days. We want to make a decision that is well thought through and takes into account all the pros and cons of the different options that are available to us.
You've been bifurcating the co-location revenue for last many quarters into an escrow account. That account, how big is that account now? Because that's I understand is more than the fine which SEBI has imposed, right?
Yeah. So the amount that we've been transferring into a segregated account, it's been on an ongoing basis, right? So obviously it is not restricted to the colo revenues of 2010 to 2014. We've been doing it even as we speak, including last month and the previous month, etc. So the amount that's been transferred so far is almost 2,400 crores.
And the interest which has accrued on it basically as well.
Yeah, so that amount obviously is then deployed and invested, whether it's in fixed deposit or whatever it is. So, but the amount that's been transferred is about 2,400 crores.
Okay. Now that the finality is there in terms of the number which is there, will you stop deploying that, doing an escrowing of that account? The order doesn't mention anything of that you have to stop it or something.
No, so again, that would be part of the legal advice that we get, and I mean, obviously, the obvious assumption would be that if they've actually put a finite amount that needs to be paid, then as long as you decide on what you want to do with that payment, there is no reason to put aside anything beyond what is due to be paid. Right? That would be the underlying assumption, but I'm waiting for legal advice on that matter.
As part of the order, there is also a stricter scrutiny of the position of managing director and CEO as well as the governing board. Now you have to do a half-yearly audit of the technology. You have to get an independent auditor to certify, and then the board to certify on that as well. Where are we on that? Because I understand a lot of things have changed in 2014, and ever since you came in, there are also many more changes that has come in. Where are we on those processes which have been set up, and what kind of framework are we looking at?
So I think it's obviously over the last couple of years we've done a lot to strengthen controls, processes, etc. Some relating to the colo matter and others just in general, because as an organization you're always looking at strengthening your controls, processes, risk assessment. We've got an enterprise risk architecture in place. We've hired a chief enterprise risk officer, etc., etc. So a lot has been done, including matters that came up as a result of the colo matter. Some of the points that have been mentioned in the order in terms of doing systems audit, etc., were also done in the past. It's not that we didn't have a systems audit that was done by an external systems auditor, etc. So the order says that needs to be done, and that needs to be, the report needs to be submitted to the board, all of which was also done in the past. And we have a systems auditor that does a systems audit. So we will continue to do that. We will look at the fine print of the order, and if there is anything specific that needs to be done, we will do it. But we do get an external systems auditor to review our systems and to report any findings, and that goes to the audit committee, board, etc. in any event, the audit report of the systems audit. So this is something that we will continue to do. If there is any incremental work that needs to be done or the scope needs to be widened, etc., then we will suitably amend the scope.
And based on SEBI recommendation, you bring in more independent auditors to scrutinize your technology or the enterprise which is there?
So, like I said, we had that in place already. We also have a standing committee for
They have actually
technology.
revamped the standing committee as well, right?
Not revamped the current one. They have just said that the standing committee on technology should be periodically reviewed,
Okay.
and there should be rotation of members, etc., which is from a governance perspective the right thing to do anyway. In terms of members who are involved from a governance perspective. So I think we have a very robust and high quality standing committee on technology, and any kind of technology review that gets done goes through the standing committee on technology and then to the board. So we will continue to adopt high standards of governance, whether it's technology related or otherwise.
One thing that comes very clearly is that the ball stops with the MD and CEO of the NSE. That's evident from the fact that your former predecessors have been there has been order against them from barring them from the securities market or taking any position in any of the market infrastructure which is there. Do you see that as pressure now coming on you, because ultimately every decision, even if it's taken on the ground level, it comes to your office?
See, it's important for an organization to have the right culture to start with, of compliance, risk, of making sure that from a reputational perspective, from a value standpoint, that you have the right kind of culture in the organization. That is fundamentally important. You then require the right organizational structure in terms of the right checks and balances, appropriate organizational frameworks to make sure that you have oversight of processes, independent reviews of processes and controls, and transparency in making sure that the audit that is conducted has access to all the information in order to be able to give a high quality report. It is impossible for any one individual to make sure that every single decision and every single thing that is done in the organization is correct. I mean, an individual cannot take care of that. So you require an organizational framework, the right hiring policies, the right culture, the right senior management, the right delegation of authority in terms of making sure that the organizational frameworks are appropriate for oversight of controls, processes, risks, etc. And then appropriate checks and balances in terms of independent reviews that would give an honest view of what is going on and where things need to be strengthened, etc., to the MD and CEO and to the audit committee, risk committee of the board, to the board of directors in general. So I think it's important to have those frameworks in place. Despite all of that, something could go wrong. Okay, it's not that things can't go wrong, but you just have to make sure that you have appropriate governance frameworks and the right culture and the right people in the organization in order to make sure that the risk is significantly mitigated.
Does NSE needs to enhance or bring in more stringent processes in? Or
we've done a lot of that in the last couple of years. So we have done a comprehensive review of all our controls and processes. We've obviously strengthened several areas. We've hired external talent where there were gaps in terms of oversight. As I said, we've always had high quality external reviews done by high quality firms. That continues. We have good quality people involved in governance related matters, whether independent experts, board members, standing committee on technology, etc., etc. We are a frontline regulator.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of regulatory oversight committees as well, which are all staffed with public interest directors, okay, independent directors. And so we have a lot of oversight on the exchange from external agencies as well as independent directors, and I think that is required given the nature of the organization, because you are a critical market infrastructure institution and you are a frontline regulator, and so the bar is much higher in terms of what kind of governance standards you adopt and what kind of controls and processes you have within the organization.
The reason why I'm asking is that a lot of employees were also named as part of this entire case. Within 3 or 4 showcase notices. At least 14-15 people were named in it. Many of them were let go, but some were asked to be scrutinized, and some have been barred as well for a couple of years or in the market. What happens to those employees?
So, like I said, we are getting legal opinion in a comprehensive manner on institutional related matters and employee related matters. And obviously the employees are also being represented by independent counsel, and the institution is being represented by independent counsel. The employees will have to take a call in terms of what they want to do as a matter of legal recourse based on the orders that they've got. And then depending on the result of what they choose to do, we will obviously do what is appropriate. What I want to emphasize obviously is that we are committed to doing what is right for the organization and what is right for employees.
Because you've been supporting some of the legally some of the employees. Will you continue to do so as they go for an appeal?
So we will examine all that depending on what advice we get. But like I said, as an organization, we have to do what is right by the organization as well as what is right for employees, and the two are not delinked. From a culture and from a values perspective, you have to do what is right by employees as well as an organization. So we will obviously get appropriate legal advice on that front.
On the issue of governance, because that was one of the order also which came in, does NSE or the board needs to strengthen some of the standards there, or we have enough practices now in place so that there's no further scrutiny coming in? Because now not only the MD's position is on scrutiny, but the governing board also has to certify every 6 months on technological aspect or other stuff. So does the board also needs to be strengthened to bring in more experts from technology so that it has the requisite information in place?
Today we have, as I said, we have a very high quality standing committee on technology which has experts from the technology field and different parts of the technology.
I'm talking on the board.
So I'm coming to that. So you have different layers of governance, right? A, you have very high quality people internally who have expertise on technology. B, you have external reviews of technology. C, you have a standing committee on technology which from a governance perspective is kept in the loop on all technology related issues. And D, when you get to the board level, on the board you have people with technology background.
Okay.
So the point I'm making is that at all levels you have people with appropriate skill set that from a governance perspective would strengthen the overall governance structure. And so, I do believe that we have high standards of governance in NSE. Over the last couple of years, we've strengthened those governance frameworks. We have very high quality people, including independent experts that are associated with NSE at different parts of the governance structure. And so I think it's a very well governed organization, as it should be, as a frontline regulator and a critical market infrastructure institution.
One of the repercussions of this is that you're not allowed to introduce any of the derivative products for the next 6 months. Now that could be challenging for you because you have entered into commodities market where the market is slow to go in terms of growth, but it needs a lot of products to be out there. Are you going to see that as a challenge, because 6 months is a big time for an exchange?
Yeah, so that is part of the order, and it is what it is. We will have to wait for 6 months till we launch any new derivative product.
You will not challenge on that part?
Well, I mean, like I said, I don't want to comment on what our strategy is going to be as it relates to the order. But specific to this point, if we were to comply with this order, then we will have to wait for 6 months in terms of any new product that we want to launch. And that, as you rightly said, from a commodities perspective, given that it's a new segment, there were obviously things in the pipeline that we were planning to launch.
How many products were in the pipeline which were supposed to come?
I don't have the exact number, but we did have plans to launch some agri related products and some non-agri products as well.
Okay. Now, final thing is on the IPO. That's something which investors were looking forward. This was a big sword hanging on NSE, and they wanted a certainty before you go for an IPO, or even the regulator approves the IPO prospectus. Now, a finality has come in with respect to the amount you have to pay, depending upon what legal opinion you get, whether you're going to challenge it or you have to go forward and try to close the matter here. Do we have a certainty on the IPO now? To 2020, it's likely that an IPO will come in for.
Well, I mean, based on a reading of the order, obviously it can't happen for 6 months.
Yeah.
But then after that.
But then you can prepare in the meantime, right?
Yeah. Anyway, any kind of DRHP document and preparation for the IPO would take 6 months, if not longer. So from that perspective, 6 months is not going to really come in the way of any kind of preparation plan and for going public. So from that perspective also it's a positive, because 6 months is a very reasonable period that would have been involved anyway to prepare for an IPO.
Have you been in touch with some of the investors after the order has come in?
Well, I mean, it's come in only last night. So obviously there have been some shareholders who have sent me messages surrounding the order, but I have not specifically spoken or had any shareholder call or anything surrounding the order.
You plan to have one to get a feedback from the investors on
not immediately. We first need to get a good understanding of the orders. We need to get appropriate legal input on what the implications of the order are. We need to be clear about what our plan of action is, and then I'm sure we'll do the right thing in terms of talking to all stakeholders, etc. Yeah.
So,
and there are shareholder directors on the board as well.
Anyways.
So,
it's likely that 2020 you will have that IPO which was been in the pipeline for nearly 3-4 years.
I hope so, because we have a 6-month period that we have to wait.
Unless you're going to challenge it.
So like I said, we'll have to see how things evolve, but at least as far as the order is concerned, they've said that basically it's a 6-month period that we're not able to access public market. So there I want to clarify that obviously in terms of business for NSE or operations of NSE, this order has no implications on functioning of the markets or anything. So come tomorrow, today has been a trading holiday anyway. Come tomorrow, markets will function normally. There will be no disruption for any investor. Business on NSE will continue the way it's been happening across all segments. And the trust in NSE and trust in Indian markets is well established, and I'm sure that will continue. But this is just a resolution of a matter that relates to 2010, and so it's almost 7-8 years old. And obviously people have moved on, and NSE has also done various things in order to make sure that controls, processes, etc. have been strengthened. And so this does not have any impact on the functioning of NSE or for investors trading in Indian markets, etc.
Will it have any impact on the discussions that you're having with Singapore Exchange?
No, because that relates to GIFT City.
Yeah.
It relates to transitioning liquidity in an existing Nifty futures contract from SGX to GIFT City. GIFT City is a separate regulated exchange.
Okay.
This order relates to NSE.
Okay.
It doesn't relate to the GIFT City exchange. The GIFT City exchange is a separate exchange.
So the connect can happen because
this should not come in the way of transitioning SGX liquidity to GIFT City.
Mr. Limaye, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks.
Thank you.